Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope you all are fine. Keep a very good care of you. Today we will do reading of this chapter. As you can see, the miser's donkey. This story is about a miser, and there are some more characters in this story. So let's start reading to know what is the story. Students, what is the meaning of the miser? The meaning of the miser is a person who hoards wealth and spend as little money as possible. So let's start the story. Let's start the reading. There once was a young man in Cairo who had inherited. Inherited means to receive money or property after the death of the previous holder. From his father, a sum of about 2,000 piastres. Piastres is a money, or you can say currency. As a piastre in Egypt is a country name, is a small unit of money. Rajiv was not so rich after all as one might suppose. Students, the meaning of suppose is think that something is true or probable but lack proof or certain knowledge. So, the wisest way to use his money would have been to set up in trade. But to this he gave no thought. Trade means the action of buying and selling goods and services. But to this he gave no thought. Rajiv loved a very good and sweet girl, and his only wish was to make a home where they would live happily married. So, this story is about a young man who lived in Cairo and he had only 2,000 piastres after the death of his father. So, he wanted to make a home for both of them. Actually, he wanted to make a home uh, for the girl he wanted to marry. So, he had met her quite by accident at the fountain of a mosque. And as she drew aside her veil, you know, that a thin fabric to hide face, to drink, he caught sight of her face. When he was drinking, and he looked the face of the girl. She was plainly dressed and looked as though she belonged to a humble but respectable family. Rajiv saw her enter a neat little dwelling. Dwelling mean a place for residence, and later he learned that she was as good as she was beautiful. Actually, he wanted to marry. He wanted to marry the girl, and he lost very little time before he called on the parents and begged them to give their daughter as his bride. So now he asked her parents that he wanted to marry their daughter. It seemed, however, that they would only consent to a marriage with a man who possessed 5,000 piastres. Actually, their parents wanted to marry their daughter with a person who had 5,000 piastres. Okay, so they distressed Rajiv greatly as he didn't have that amount of money. They disappointed Rajiv, and they make the Rajiv sorrow or sad as he didn't have that amount of money. In the end, he begged them to give him a little time in which to see if there was any way of obtaining the required sum. So, alas, said the young man, as he went away, how I deplored the time. Deplore means feel or express strong disapproval of something. I have wasted of my life. Had I started to work hard some years ago, I would not be in this trouble. He took out his money and counted it again and again, as if by doing so he could make more of it. No, it was still 2,000 piastres, no more, no less. He needed another 3,000 piastres within a few days. Or the maiden is an unmarried girl he loved might be married to another. He counted he counted the piastres again and again, and he was thinking about that he should work very hard some years ago. No wonder he couldn't sleep when he went to bed that night. All the night he was very sad. He was thinking of every possible and impossible way of making money, and he was planning how to get more money. So at last a bright idea came into his mind. Away in a city far distant from Cairo, he had an old uncle who was supposed to be very rich. Suppose he was thinking that his uncle is very was very rich, because he was thinking that something is true or probable. He was not sure. He was supposed. I will go to see him, said Rajib to himself, and surely if I explain my reason for asking help, my uncle will not refuse me the 3,000 piastres I require. As you know that he has 2,000 piastres after the death of his father, and now he need 3,000 piastres more as the demand of the girl which he wanted to marry. Early next morning, he started on his journey, and to save expenses, he went on foot. To save expenses, he did not spend any money and he went on foot. In this journey, he went on foot. When the young man came within sight of the city where his uncle lived, he asked some boys to direct him to the dwelling of the rich Yusuf. They burst into a rude laugh. The rich Yusuf, indeed? You mean the beggarly old miser Yusuf, who would not part with a crumb of bread? Just fancy how the poor young fellow's heart sank. If his old uncle was such a miser, there was no hope of getting any money from him. So with the when the boys were talking about the old man and they were laughing, so he thought that maybe his uncle is a miser. So one of the boys showed him the way, and okay, students, now he reached at his uncle's home, and when he knocked at the door, it was opened by a dirty, angry looking old man. What do you want? He asked in a harsh voice. Poor Rajib could hardly hide his disappointment. He hid his sadness and was not now quite sure his journey had been in vain. Nevertheless, he decided to make the best of a bad job and addressed his uncle with great politeness, with great respect. I'm your sister's son, uncle. I'm Rajiv from Cairo. Will you not bid me welcome when I have come to so far to see you? How is your health, my dear uncle? Well, enough in health, my nephew, but I'm poor, miserably poor, replied the old man. Of course, I can't send you away, but you will have anything but a comfortable visit. Never mind that, said Rajib. Both riches and poverty come from heaven. Yusuf's room was very dark and it seemed empty of all furniture besides an old mat and a pail of water. There was nothing to be seen. They sat down on the floor. Okay, now you understand the story? His uncle is not poor man, but he is very miser. He is a miser. Okay? So look at the clothes that he wear. His clothes torn from different places. And when Rajib looked the condition of his room, that was very dark and it seemed empty of all furnitures. And there was only a mat and a pail of water. There was nothing to be seen. So Rajiv was thinking that his journey is useless. Super of cheese and crust of bread. Crust means the tough outer part of a bread. Rajiv didn't know that the cheese had been bought in his honor and that the neighbors who had seen him go out to buy it had held up their hands in astonishment, means in great surprise. They thought that poor old Yusuf had gone completely mad. As soon as the young man began to talk about the purpose of his visit, an angry gleam came into the eye of the old miser. Gleam means shine. He visit that when he know about why this young man came there, he was very angry, and he said, I hope you have not come here to seek help from me. He cried, I am nothing but a beggar. There is not a poorer man in the world than I am. The old miser said, when he understand for what purpose the Rajiv came there, so he quickly said that I am very much poor, and here no one in the world is as poor as I am. Rajiv tried to soften his heart by describing the sweetness and goodness of the girl whom he wished to make his wife. Finding this hopeless, he rose at last and went out for a breath of fresh air. He tried to explain the beauty of the girl whom he wished to make his wife, but useless. And then with, then he was very disappointed, and he went outside for fresh air. Outside the house, a most wretched and wretched and lean donkey lay in a small shed. He saw a donkey that lay in a small shed, munching some scraps. Chewing some scraps. Scraps means fragment of straw. Rajiv was very fond of animals and couldn't bear to see them ill treated. In pity for the poor starved creature, he found a shop where he bought some barley, which he gave with some fresh water to the donkey. Returning to the house, he passed a sleepless night upon the floor, for there was not a bed. That the donkey is saying that please save me from another hard master. Will you not buy me? Please save me from another hard master. All the way to the market, he wondered whether, in mercy to the suffering animal, he ought not to purchase it. This is a picture of a market where this old miser went with his nephew. The donkey was young and there was nothing wrong with it except that it needed food. At the market, several offers were made for the donkey. One bid 400 piastres, another said 500 piastres, still another offered 600 piastres. Finally, Rajiv, to his uncle's great surprise, made the highest offer of 700 piastres. What do you want with it? Asked his uncle. I should like to own it. He said, I wanted to take it. That's all, replied the nephew. Now Rajiv had left his money safely locked up at home. So, as you know, that Rajiv had no money because he left his money at home. So he asked Yusuf to go back with him to Cairo to get his money. During his stay at the young man's house, he was well entertained and he certainly enjoyed being fed for nothing. The donkey seemed quite a different creature with the change of masters and was eager to do everything that was asked of him. Now, because the masters are changed, now the donkey was very happy and he wanted to do everything that someone asked for him. After a stay of 5 days, old Yusuf went back home, carrying his 700 piastres with him. The poor old miser was attacked, robbed, and slain by highway robbers. He was robbed and killed by highway robbers. Kind-hearted Rajiv felt quite sorry when he heard the news of his uncle's death. He mounted the donkey and rode off to Yusuf's house to arrange the funeral. What is the meaning of funeral? Funeral means burial, means service held shortly after a person's death. Within the miserable hovel, hovel means a simply constructed house or room. Within the miserable hovel, there was not one article of value, and Rajiv was compelled to pay for all the cost of burial. The donkey stabbled again in the old shed, seemed restless and excited, and pawed the ground so that his master was puzzled and brought him an extra supply of food and water. Still, the animal stamped and pawed as if trying to dig a hole. Rajiv stared at the animal for a few minutes. He stared at the animal for a few minutes and then suddenly ran into the house. He returned with a rusty old pick and pick is a tool and began to turn up the ground. At about a depth of 1 meter, Rajiv came upon a small iron chest which when opened he found to be full of golden coins. You can see in this picture, this is the old shed where the donkey stamped his feet and he wanted to aware his master about the hidden treasure. So he quickly ran to the house and come back with a rusty old pick and began to turn up the ground. While he was grazing in astonishment, in amazement, at his new-found treasure, the donkey ran over to another part of the shed and again started to stamp and paw at the ground. Rajiv seized the pick and after some minutes he brought to light another iron chest. Seized means take hold of suddenly and forcibly. This box proved to be full of rupees. It means a precious stone, emerald, a bright green precious stone, and other valuable gems. Gems mean a precious or semi-precious stone. The ass then became calm and seemed quite satisfied, and the young master took this as a sign that there was no more trial. Riding back to Cairo with his unexpected wealth, Rajib hurried to the house of the girl he loved and showed her parents some of his jewels. Needless to say, they agreed to his proposal, and the marriage took place a few weeks later. Rajib and his wife lived happily together for many a long year. The donkey which had brought them such good fortune was always treated like a friend of the family, and no work was ever given him, except indeed to carry his master's children on his back now and then. Everyone knew him, everyone loved him, and though these young days were miserable, he spent the rest of life as happy as any donkey could be. Now they use the donkey only for to carry his only he was carry his master's children on his back now and then, and he was treated very good in his new master's home. So now Rajib lived happily with his wife, and this is the end of the story, students. I hope you like the story. So take care. Allah Hafiz.